Hello, good evening, everybody. Hello, good evening, everybody. At the very outset, I hope hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you. Good evening once again. At the very outset, I hope each one of you and your families are safe. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you, Visamo Kids Foundation, for the invite to join the series. It gives me immense pleasure to see the way each student at Visamo Kids have shaped up over the years. This wouldn't have been possible without the dedication and hard work of the entire team. The recent results of the 10th and 12th board have also been exemplary. I take this opportunity to congratulate the entire team. Today's topic is change is the only constant in life. Well, where does this quote come from? There's a very popular life quote which was first coined by a Greek philosopher, Heraclitus, in his book Fragments. He asserted that life is always in flux and everything and all things would change. What we all need to remember is that change is an imperative part of life and that it is an inevitable. One just cannot do without it. The fact still remains that many people are afraid of change. But the only way is to train oneself to see the positive outcome of it. This particular life quote, I'm sure each one of you would agree, would be very, very relevant to the current scenario as we are all reeling under the COVID-19 pandemic over the last couple of months. So, how do we go about accepting the change? It's often advised to live your life in the moment without worrying about the future. What we all need to realize is what matters the most is the present. There is no end to worrying about the future. Of course, we need to look at the past and take lessons from the past. So today, I will be talking to you on as to how we need to tackle change as a process and how we would be looking at evolving into a successful person in spite of facing this inevitable part of life. When we mention change, what we need to understand that it applies to everything in life. All change is one and vice versa. For example, let's take change in day. It turns into night and the process repeats. People take birth and they die after a few years. For that matter, even atoms die after serving their purpose in the body. So, the best way to look at adapting yourself to the process of change is not to get attached to anything in life, realizing the fact that nothing remains the same forever. Let's now look very closely to what's been happening to each one of us in our life for the last couple of months with the pandemic bringing about changes in all our lives. Each one of us have responded to the pandemic in a different manner. Some of us were traumatized. The others have innumerable positive experiences to narrate in terms of having built a good family bonding, having cleared misunderstandings, getting more family time, etc. So, what's the best way to get the best out of change, such as the pandemic that has hit us so hard? As popular as this simple quote is, not many of us have learned the art of successfully applying this meaning into our lives. To me, when I look back in my life, I have only seen changes all through. Hailing from a defense background, right from my childhood, every 2 years, pack and move. Soon, got married again in the defense services, the change continued. Over the years, I have realized that this quote has made complete sense to me. The best way is to learn from a change. We now would examine how do we go about change as a process. When I talk about change as a process, when I look at my past experience, I feel I had a lot to learn at every phase of my life. Learning is a continuous process. So let's all live by it. There is no point of running away from a change. So look at change as a process. How do we go about adopting change as a process? There are 4 main steps to make this quote a part of your existence. Firstly, get into the habit of learning from it. Secondly, embrace the change. Third, accept the change. And the fourth would be to apply it. Now, what exactly do we understand by saying that we need to learn from a change? Let me correlate this particular phrase, learn from the change, to the pandemic that we are all reeling under. How do we learn from this? This was really a total unexpected thing that had come up in the month of March, wherein we were caught unprepared. None of us ever thought that we would have got to face such a thing in our life. How do we take through this change? The first thing is you need to understand this change is going, the way the change is going to impact your life. Now, I would like to correlate this particular thing to the COVID-19 pandemic as to how it has affected our education sector. When the pandemic hit us in the month of March, we were in the verge of conducting our annual exams and winding off the previous academic year. Now, what do we learn from the pandemic? As educationists, we were all looking out for what next. And the fact was, the nationwide closures were found to be impacting 91% of the world's student population. That's what I would relate to this message. Unless I relate to this message, I couldn't have gone to the next step. So please understand, I'm talking about how do you go about accepting change as a process in your life. Learn from what's happening around you. You need to be alive politically, socially, to understand how things are going to impact and bring about changes in your life. When the pandemic hit us in the month of March, the UNESCO had estimated that about 32 crores of students are going to be affected in India, including those in schools and colleges. Well, what do we do? How do we go about? Now, when we look at the quote, it further clearly directs that one should not be afraid of change either way because they'll have got to deal with it. So, what do the educationists do the moment that we face this challenge? We started looking at the next alternative for the delivery of academics, wherein we narrowed on remote learning as a viable solution to students during this time. Why remote learning? Because we found that to be very convenient, on the go, affordable access to lessons. When I say affordable, please be aware of the digital divide in our country. When I say affordable, it is more towards the urban areas. But the educationists were too quick to respond. The moment COVID-19 had entered into our lives, educationists was looking out for alternative solutions, and the show must go on. So we had remote learning as an alternate solution, right? So that's the best way to and enjoy the process. We were all right so far. The third step that each one of us need to be adopting to take change as a process is to embrace it. What do you imply by the word embrace? Learn to look at the positive side of the change. You'll be a happier person. You'll start looking at things in a more optimistic way. You'll start looking at things and get solutions to the problems instead of posing questions to the problem. And you'll never have the word problem in your dictionary once you look at the positive side of things. So learn to embrace the change. Once you learn to embrace the change, you'll feel a fire rekindling inside yourself, the kind that will help you become your greatest version. So, team, when you see yourself as being moving through time for greater purpose, you'll have no other alternative left with you but to embrace change in a default mode and live life through it. So that's exactly what each one of us should be doing. The pandemic has hit us hard, all of us, the entire world, no doubt. But that doesn't mean that everything comes to a standstill. We need to move on. We need to move on. So again, I repeat, what we are talking about today is how do we look at change as a process? Try applying it in your life. It's not only during this pandemic era, all through your journey of life. When there is any change, take it as a four-step process. Learn from it, embrace it. The third step would be accept the change. The best way to accept a change in life is to flow with it. What happens to a young girl when she is married and she goes to a family, another family? It's a total change. Does she have any other alternative? Does she have any other choice? She's been told by her parents that she needs to adapt herself and then get going. She needs to move along with the flow. So the best way is train your brain to be flexible enough to know and accept things for exactly how they are. Do not be afraid to look at the present for what it is. Look it in the eye and feel the changes. Team, please remember one thing: you cannot grow if you cannot feel, see, accept, and embrace the changes life brings to you. Please understand the philosophy of this popular quote will resonate with your truth in such a way that you won't stop yourself from living your best life and accept all the changes of life with your heart. Now we come to the fourth step. That's apply it. Again, I repeat, what are we looking at? We are looking at change as a process. How do we take across the change as a process? It's a four-step process. We learn from it, we embrace it, we accept it. Now comes the time to apply it. Whatever changes has happened in your life, learn to apply the changes in your life as well. What happens when you learn to apply changes in your life? But this particular philosophy that change is the only constant in life will help you be your best version. Believe me, believe me. It's only going to enable you to bring out the best version in you. And you'll no more be afraid of any change. And you'll never be afraid of accepting change and embrace changes in your life. In fact, you will only get better at living your life once you know that there is nothing to regret ever. Right? So we are finished with the first part of the change is the only constant. Let's now have a close look at what are the benefits of embracing change as the only constant in life. There are certain benefits. Anybody? Like, could anybody say? Yes, anyone? What do you think could be the advantages of embracing change as a life, change as a constant in life? You don't tend to get easily overwhelmed. You never get stressed out because you have already got into the mode of looking at life as the present moment. Everything happens in the present. You are not going to get worried about, of course, you need to plan for your future. This doesn't mean that you don't plan for your future, but there's no anxiety. You're not anxious. You're ready to take calculated risks. You want to grow. You want to learn all through the life. You want to evolve all over. After all, life is always learning in a continuous mode. So the first thing that what is advantage to you is by embracing changes, you're not easily overwhelmed. You tend to develop a balance and you become more real, authentic. The third thing is you'll always feel more grateful as you get an opportunity to accept things as they are. The advantage of embracing change is that you will never ever force anything on you. You'll pamper yourself. You'll take care that you stay positive always. See, what we need to realize is we were born, we live, and then when the time is right, we die. This alone should inspire us to accept the truth of change. Whether you want it or not, things will keep on changing and you will keep on growing. So please understand there are certain benefits attached to embracing change. You need to embrace change instead of running away from it. Why should you run away from change? Face the challenge. Once you learn to face the change, When you accept the changes, you will expect them quite often. Please remember this. When you accept the changes, you expect changes to happen quite often. You're ready for any surprises and you take it with a positive attitude. Ultimately, what happens is you train your mind every day to be ready to face any situation that demands change in you and the environment you live in. Friends, it's very, very important to train your mind every day to be ready to face any situation. These days, you're working from home. Tomorrow, when you're all set and leaving for the office, talk to yourself, do a self-talk. No one knows what is in store for me today. But come what may, train your mind, yoga. We talk so much of yoga these days, right? So train your mind every day to be ready to face any situation that demands change in you and the environment you live in. So what happens then? Thus, it helps you become better at living life and doesn't leave you overwhelmed like it used to before. In case there were instances where you felt that you used to get overwhelmed, once you train your mind, yes, very rightly said, Bandita, coming out of your comfort zone takes time. Yeah, we need to discuss on that. You should learn to come out of your comfort zone. That is why change is advocated. You know, comfort zone makes one very, very complacent, Bandita. So learn to come out of your comfort zone. Learn to take risk. If you get into your comfort zone, you will never ever grow. When I talk about growth, let me tell you, Kalorex as an organization is a growing organization and a learning organization. Okay? So what is the beauty of this organization is everybody sees growth here. It is your hard work, dedication, which will be a catalyst and will ensure that each one of you move to a bigger and a higher role. I have walked through every phase of the growth story of Kalorex. Being an old timer of Kalorex, I vouch by the statement that it's a learning organization, it's a growing organization, it's an employee-friendly organization. So all the more reason you all should move out of your comfort zone, right? Now, second point, when we talk about what are the advantages of embracing changes, you develop a sense of balance. It's very important to maintain a sense of balance. What do you understand by the sense of balance? It's not about losing your cool. We have heard a lot of talk about emotional EQ, right? Being strong. I understand that. See, you need to develop a sense of balance, and that sense of balance will come to you the moment you learn to come out of your comfort zone and embrace change. What you'll need to understand is everything in nature occurs in a cycle, including this human experience of change. When we realize this, we take things as they come to us. We begin balancing life starting from day one and then leading to larger, bigger, and grander experience. Yes? Who doesn't like growth? We are all highly ambitious. And there's nothing wrong. It's good. Learn to take calculated risks. Move on. You need to evolve over the years. You cannot be like a dead wood lying there. Move on. Right? So there's a sense of equilibrium in our lives when we embrace changes for a better life. See, what perhaps the best thing that can happen to you after embracing the truth of change is that you become completely authentic in your existence. Each one of us need to learn to be authentic in our existence. Otherwise, there is no difference between the animals and human beings, right? You let go of all those parts of your being when you understand that Life is always flowing, and embracing change is one way to live an authentic life with real people around you. You can only recognize real when you're authentic as well. So, you will recognize real by default when you learn to embrace change. We are looking at the advantages of embracing change. Okay? You need to learn to accept change. Just to repeat, once you learn how to accept change, nothing will overwhelm you. A sense of balance will happen. You will not force anything anymore. See, many a times you take on a role thinking that there's no other alternative but to take it on. So then what happens? The graph goes down, right? So what happens is you don't enjoy the particular profile anymore. Be authentic, be real. You need to speak to your authorities and say, listen, somehow I do not understand the role. I need to, please, either mentor me, guide me, but please do not take on things forcefully. Once you learn the technique of embracing change, you will not force things on you anymore. Once you're of the opinion that change is the only constant thing in life, you flow along with everything. Believe me, you will start flowing with everything. This means that you don't force things in life. You understand that forcing things create a block in your energy, which only tends to hold you back from reaching out to things and people that deserve your attention. Let me say, if you are not a career oriented woman and you would rather like sitting back home, somebody is forcing you to go and work. What exactly is happening there? You're actually depriving your family from quality time of yours. So please understand, never force things on you. Thus, you stop forcing things and start embracing them once you start accepting changes. Then what happens? As you accept change, this will help you to move forward without any negative feelings or attachment of the past. It's very important. See, it's very essential to do a self introspection once a while. Sit back, relax, and try to run through the past experiences. Learn from your past experience, plan for the future, but live in the present moment. That's how you go about change. This will enable you to live your life successfully. Now, the next advantage of embracing change is gratitude. Have a sense of gratitude. You need to be grateful. When you embrace change, your attitude towards life completely turns around. You know that you will never be the same person that you were a few months before once you learn that you need to accept how to accept change. Change is a process. Yes, I'm going to accept it. I'm not going to be the same person as I was a few months ago. Then slowly and gradually, you become grateful for everything that's around you. Because you know that if you don't live this moment completely, it will be gone in the blink of an eye. Thus, you become more connected with the world around you. And ultimately, you're amazed all the time. And as a result, you become more grateful. It's a great feeling. Gratitude is something that all of us need to possess. It's very, very important. So you become more grateful when you learn to embrace change, and that's an advantage that you'll be having over others once you learn how to embrace change. Now, there are so many benefits of accepting and embracing change as the only constant in life. Once you embrace your way of seeing life, life will change drastically. And you will be able to give yourself countless reasons for loving and appreciating life for all that is. The best way to embrace change is to love yourself. Once a day, give a pat on your back and say, well done. That's a good job done. If you're not getting enough appreciation from the people or from the angle from where it should come from, always give a self appreciation, pat your back. That will boost your performance. That will enable you to adapt to change faster, right? So these are the main points or the advantages that you will be having once you learn to sorry. When you love yourself, it becomes easier to accept all that's not meant for you and everything that is. Now, it doesn't matter how frequently your life changes when you truly love yourself. I have experienced this myself. Change had been a part and parcel of my life till date. But I did nurture myself, I did love myself, and I moved on. As many of you in Kalorex must have seen me, I've been in the growth, part of the growth story, had to move away as I had to give quality time to my family. But of course, got back to Kalorex, moved on to a new role, and contributed to the growth story of Kalorex. I never shied away from change. I took on anything and everything that was given to me. I thought that was the best way to test how good I would be given a new role. So please understand, accepting change will only enable you to grow. Nothing matters except for the fact that you are truly amazing, and so is everything else around you. When you adapt to change, you turn to be a totally different personality, and people look upon you. So, how do we look or summarize as change is the only constant? Perhaps the best thing about accepting change as the only constant in life is that we tend to learn to look at life with a giant magnifying glass. We appreciate everything around us because we know that things will not remain the same for a long time. It will never be the same for a long time. Someone with a negative mindset would always fear the change. He or she may try to run away from this truth. However, once a person learns that there is no escape from change, he or she slowly starts to look at it as a positive thing. He or she then, by default, learns to embrace as well as accept this truth of life and flow along with it. The greatest advice one can get is to enjoy life without attachments. Each one of us need to learn to detach ourselves from this life and people and train our mind to attach it to oneself and our purpose in life. Detachment, never get attached. The moment you have an attachment, you had it. You get stuck, cannot move forward. You get emotional, you get sentimental. You overlook the purpose in life. So, what should you all be doing? Learn to detach yourself from this life and people and train your mind to attach life and your purpose in life. And then you have no option but to bloom. Let us now closely examine what are the changes that has happened in the education sector. We all being educationists, we need to closely examine what has happened for the last couple of months amid the COVID-19 pandemic. You all would agree there has been an evolution in teaching methodology, right? Schools have now evolved teaching methodology to remain synchronized with the latest ways and means to impart effective education through various means of online platforms and virtual classrooms, etc. Yeah, evolution of teaching methodology. That's what has happened amid COVID-19 pandemic. But Team Kalorex. Kalorex has always been a forerunner in terms of implementation of technology in education. If I remember, around 2003, the flagship project of Kalorex, GPS Bopal, Ahmedabad, was already into technology in education. This is what happens under the leadership of a charismatic and a thought leader. When we have charismatic leadership leading the team, so we always think ahead of times. So I need to congratulate the team Kalorex that you all already have done the job. Way back in 2003, we were already implementing technology in education. I remember all of us carrying laptops to the classroom. I remember creating digital repository in our flagship project. The basic idea was the digital content, the pedagogy from the best teacher made available to every student, irrespective of whether the teacher moves on or not. It gets uploaded to the digital repository, wherein the others carry forward the pedagogy. So each one of you should feel proud. We were already there in 2003. I understand many newcomers have joined the team. You all need to join the flow. Get into implementation of technology into the classroom. So now we are looking at the change in the education system amid this COVID-19 pandemic. There have been a evolution in teaching methodology. Now, change in paradigms of designing lessons. This goes along with the technology in education. Okay. Then we have learned to rise and adapt to embrace the new cybernetic culture, which Kalorex had already been doing. Now, what is the advantage when you have technology in classroom? Both the tutees and tutors have learned the definition of teamwork and adaptability. Okay. And the learning outcomes are well defined. There's a lot of teamwork happening when you have technology integrated into the classroom. You'll also see learners becoming more proactive in sharing their learning resources. So slowly and gradually we see if we are successful in implementing technology effectively in a classroom, these simulated classrooms teach us to be innovative in receiving information and at the same time delivering quality education to the students. So these are the changes that has happened in the COVID-19 time in terms of in the education sector. What else has happened during the COVID-19 pandemic? While this pandemic has redefined how we carry ourselves in our daily lives going forward, it also compelled us to have a retrospection on how we all have taken strides in seeing through the crisis while balancing our professional and personal goals and timelines. And I'm sure all of us as teaching professionals had to accommodate the new ways and means to fulfill our roles. Be compassionate towards others in absorbing psychological transience, and also including ourselves to settle down to the new normal. It was not easy adjusting to implementation of technology in the classroom, right? So to a large extent, yes, it has to, for the schools in the urban areas and who have been able to adapt themselves and with strong digital infrastructure have been able to do justice the last couple of months. But let's not ignore the negative impacts of COVID-19 on education. Cross-border movements of students is going to get affected. When we say cross-border movement of students, universities in many of the countries like Australia, UK, New Zealand, and Canada As you're all aware, they are highly dependent on the movement of students from China and India. So right now, many parents will avoid sending their children abroad for higher education due to the high risk from the pandemic. Yeah? So this is again negative, this thing of the COVID-19 on education. Many of us, many of the educationists have also voiced their view that sudden shift to online learning without any planning, because this came as a sudden surprise, right? We were not ready for it. Many of the educational institutions weren't ready, especially in countries like India, where the backbone for online learning was not ready and the curriculum was not designed for such a format. This had created risk for most of our students becoming passive learners. So there are people who had voiced their concerns, saying that if the system is not ready to take on, what will happen is we will have large number of passive learners. So we need to take care how we are going to take it across. Not ignoring the fact, unprepared teachers for online education. Online education is a special kind of methodology, and not everybody can take on without any training. So there is a risk in such a situation. Learning outcomes may not be achieved, and it may be only resulting in engaging the students. It is engaging the students. There's no learning outcomes. So these are certain negative impacts during the COVID-19 pandemic in the education sector, right? So whatever it is, when we look at it, any change that is so disruptive and so likely to bring with it some new opportunities that will transform the higher education system worldwide, and especially in a country like India, which is planning to bring about a major change in the education sector. We need to look at overcoming the negative impacts of COVID-19 in the education sector, right? Positive changes in education due to COVID-19 will have got to be further strengthened and looked at closely to ensure that we don't end up only engaging students, but also look at the learning outcomes achieved thereby. Okay. So learning, as they say, is a continuous and ever-evolving process. The educational institutions in India, from schools, right from schools to universities, they need to actually cash on this present adversity as a blessing in disguise and make digital education a major part of the learning process for all learners in future. I do understand there is a digital divide in India between the urban and the rural. Not ignoring the fact that 35% of our population only resides in cities and 65% is in rural area. So what happens to that 65% of students? How do we go about doing justice to them? We as educationists are firmly doing our best and trying to do justice for the students who are in the rural areas. So I would conclude by saying that this is not the time to wait and let the tide pass, but to rise and re-engineer the education sector to benefit all the stakeholders. Thank you.